You want to know what I think is going to happen next?
Oh, tell me.
I think Democrats are going to win in Georgia, and then Joe Biden's going to become president, and then they're going to pack the Supreme Court. Maybe because you might get like a Manchin Democrat who's like, I refuse to allow this.
Yeah.
But the reason why I think they're going to win in Georgia is because what I've often said is Trump's not on the ballot, and people don't like the Republican Party. They like Trump, and they like the new wave of Trump Republicans. It's a smaller group relative to the political establishment. But the runoff in Georgia is on January 5th. On January 6th, Alex Jones, many others say they're going to be in D.C. with 10 million people.
Yeah.
How many people from Georgia are going to pack their bags on the 5th to drive
and perhaps
to DC?
Not vote in Georgia?
Exactly.
I know it's concerning for sure. That can't happen, though, Tim. I mean, you're right. Look, let's war game this. If the Democrats win in Georgia, I think without question they will try to pack the court.
Yep.
Don't believe me. This isn't what I think. They've said it. They're going to make 2 more states. Would probably be Democrat senators representing those states.
What are they going to do? D.C. and Puerto Rico.
D.C. and Puerto Rico. They're going to probably ditch the Electoral College. Again, don't believe me. They've said it.
I think that would require 2/3 ratification. So that they can't.
They're going to try to do it,
but it won't matter. I don't think. I think they've already changed the rules beyond the Electoral College.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It won't matter. Yeah, it won't matter.
Look, the fact that they've done universal mail-in voting, they've obliterated the chain of custody for our election system. They've ripped security away from it. Nancy Pelosi wanted to get rid of voter ID. They want no security in their elections while they screamed that we had insecure elections for 4 years.
And listen, every pundit, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, the general sentiment is, well, Democrat in the White House, Republicans pick up seat in the off year, right? That's just always been the historical trend. What the party that holds the White House, the opposite party picks up seats that year. But in the state of Pennsylvania, I don't think that people realize the paradigm shift that happened in 2020. There was something called, as part of Act 77, called the automatic opt-in. So during the highest presidential voter turnout in our nation's history, the Democrats sent out something like 2+ million mail-in ballots. If you got a ballot application and you check the automatic opt-in, you get a ballot sent to you for every election until the day that you die. And if you're a Democrat, probably after that as well. But my point is, the idea that all of those people, all of those Democrats are going to get ballots in the off cycle.
Right.
So they're feasibly, they could have a presidential voter turnout in a mid-cycle in the state of Pennsylvania,
Democrats only get elected with low information voters. And I'm not saying that to disparage your average Democrat voter, but the fact that you've had Democrats talking about lowering the voting age to 16 is all the proof I need to say Democrats survive off of low information voters. People who aren't. So listen, why do they want universal mail-in voting? Well, the left says to make it easier for people to vote. Should someone who has no idea what they're voting for or who they're voting for vote? My personal opinion, no. That's why I don't like, we talked about this quite a bit, getting rid of the Democrat and Republican, getting rid of parties on ballots. Imagine you got a flyer in the mail, or imagine you go to vote and you see Connor Lamb, Sean Parnell, no Democrat, no Republican, just the names. The only people who are going to get the votes are the people who are like, I like Sean Parnell or I like Connor Lamb. Now what happens is you get a ballot in the mail and they go, Democrat. They don't know what they're voting for. They don't know why they're voting for it. And that's what Democrats thrive on. We can't function if people just are saying, I don't know, party, boop, and they're not really voting for anything other than team. Then you end up with people who sell you out to, say, China, and that's what we're headed towards. You know what, man? I think the Democrats, this was their reckless abandon, desperate attempt to get enough votes to beat Trump by waking many people to politics, getting them as active as possible and angry as possible. And now we're all sitting here watching this relief bill, this ridiculous omnibus spending bill. Everybody basically hates it.
Everybody's angry.
Democrats hate it. The leftists hate it. Conservatives hate it. Trump supporters hate it. They're throwing it in our faces and laughing. So at this point, I think the establishment is rather content. Mitch McConnell is already telling other senators not to support Trump on January 6th. Don't do it. He's already planning to override Trump's veto. Trump wants to veto the defense spending bill. Well, the Republicans never had his back. They were only forced to have his back because they knew that Trump had the support of the people.
Well, let me tell you, man, I think that's a huge look. If that's the case, if what you say is true, it'd be a huge mistake for any Republican in the House or the Senate to run away or distance themselves from the president. He is by far the most popular president in our nation's history, period. And no, I don't include Joe Biden in that count because I'm sorry. Look, you could say what I don't want to get you in trouble on YouTube or whatever. So I don't believe that he got 80 million votes. The guy never left his basement. He doesn't inspire anybody. He did not have a single message. He can't string together a single coherent sentence. And this idea of widespread voter fraud, I disagree with it. I think the fraud was very surgical. And if you look at the red waves happened everywhere, except for in areas in counties that Democrats absolutely had to win. It was a zero-sum game. Look at John James in Michigan. Look at Derek Van Orden, Navy SEAL in Wisconsin. Those two guys lost. Me in PA 17. In the areas that Democrats had to win, in counties that they had to win to carry key battleground states, they won. Red wave everywhere else. In Allegheny County, the president didn't lose the state of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, right? That's not where he lost. He lost the state of Pennsylvania in Allegheny County, where Joe Biden had the second highest voter turnout ever to Lyndon B. Johnson in 1964. But by the way, Joe Biden got a couple thousand fewer votes than Lyndon B. Johnson in 1964. But in 1964, Allegheny County was 30% more populous.
There is a very easy, simple explanation. The media had been screaming "Orange Man bad" nonstop.
That's correct.
And then they launched universal mail-in voting. And so what I was saying was, in the month or two leading up to the election, you're going to have, this is really funny. I don't know who said this to me. I said, you're going to have a parent, the mail-in ballots are going to come into the house and they're going to go to their kids who are 18, 20, and they're going to be like, did you vote yet? You got to vote. You got to vote for the Democrat. And the kids will be like, I don't care, Mom. And then I think it was maybe Michael Malice who said, no, it's going to be the other way around. The college kids come home and go to their parents and go, we got our ballots. You got to vote. And you got to vote for the Democrats. And the parents go, sure, fine, whatever. I think one of the reasons why we see many of these votes were just for Biden, nobody else, was because these people don't vote. They were like, Orange Man bad, have a nice day.
Well, look, a couple things. Like, let's just even say there was no fraud, right? None whatsoever. I still contend.
Bill Barr said there was.
Well, of course. There was fraud, right? There was.
But Bill Barr said not enough to affect the outcome. This was a new statement too.
Look. My point is, let's just pretend that there was none. This is still not a free and fair election. You had the media parroting nonstop lies about the president every single day. The mainstream media, most in the media. And then you had big tech censoring stories that would have probably made people switch their vote from Joe Biden to Donald Trump. Yeah. The Hunter Biden story is a prime example of that. You had the oldest newspaper in the country, right, the New York Post, come out with a story that was perfectly vetted, fact-checked perfectly. You had Tony Bobulinski come out. The media ignored it 100%. Like something like 10% of the people who learned about this after the fact said, hey, if they knew about this Hunter Biden story going into November 3rd, they probably would not have voted for Joe Biden. And that right there, in and of itself, is enough to switch the outcome of the election. So
the Democrats control the cultural institutions,
and so it's a problem. And now with Act 77 and the mail-in ballots, specifically in Pennsylvania, they control the ballot box too.
Dude, you have secret ballot counting days after the election was done. November 5th and 6th, they're still counting on this foreign proprietary voter machine. Canadian corporation built this proprietary voting machine that counts in secret.
I don't know anything about
days after. They need to know how many they need.
No,
it's insane.
The voting machine. The problem with the voting machines is not that they're counting in secret. There's proper tabulation on these things. The problem is that when Trump campaign and others sued, the lawsuits were thrown out on procedural grounds.
The problem is it's not that they were proper or improper. It's that we don't know.
We don't know anything.
There's no transparency.
Well. There's
a lack of transparency, I should say. That is.
In Arizona, when they filed subpoenas for the voting machines to actually get the forensic analysis, you can see the vote counts. You can see the signatures. They're not doing it.
Oh, they gave us one? That's Trump what are those?
No, they blocked it and they said, we're going to court and we're not going to follow the subpoenas. They got subpoenaed and said, F you, we won't listen. And in Georgia, when Trump said we want a hard signature audit, they said no. And they did these sample audits. So every single time there's been someone saying, can we look at these machines? It's been a no. And the one time we did in Antrim County, The report came out saying widespread, they claimed in this report there were intentional errors in like 68% to force adjudication so an election official could choose where the vote goes. That's the problem. So
Well,
yeah, transparency.
I would tell you, I'll tell you what happened very simply in the state of Pennsylvania, right? There are all sorts of issues with this election. You're looking at changes that were made in the middle of the game, right? Unconstitutional changes to our election code and to voting in the middle of the game, right? The Secretary of State in the state of Pennsylvania said, we're going to remove the signature verification for ballots. We're going to remove any for mail-in ballots. We're going to remove the postmark requirement for any mail-in ballot. We're going to remove any semblance of a deadline for a mail-in ballot. This was just a few weeks before the election. So my point is, they used COVID to create chaos at the top. They changed the rules at the last minute at the top, right? And then add to that, at the next tier down, you had, what I call Zuckerberg money that was invested in heavily Democratic counties, like Allegheny County. I think got $2.2 million. I don't know. It wasn't from Zuckerberg directly, but it was from a shell corporation or something like that. You can look it up on Google right now and find it, to pay election judges to boost their salaries, right? This is all, just look it up. I don't think that this is legal, by the way, but I haven't seen lawsuits on it yet, but you bank on it. There will be lawsuits on this, where they boosted the salaries of judges of elections. They created remote satellite voting facilities where people could just show up at like an ice rink and cast their ballot. And they funded drop boxes. Yeah, and they funded drop boxes. Well, so and then beyond that, and you had this issue in a Beaver County nursing homes that I've looked at, like granny harvesting, ballot harvesting in nursing homes. You have ballots and issues of ballots of zero chains of custody in PA 17 that were cast. That we had stories and affidavits from people who heard people voting twice. Right? They mailed in a ballot and then they voted provisional. I mean, there are all sorts of issues with this, and all I'm saying, right, is that we should look into it. This is the first time that we've used an all mail-in system or no excuse absentee system in the state of Pennsylvania. This is the first time it's ever happened in the middle of a once in 100-year pandemic. Is it not okay to think critically about this and say, let's look into this a little bit to make sure that everything went as it was supposed to go? Because every ballot that was cast illegally cancels out a ballot of someone who showed up on election day to vote.
There's no political willpower.
There's some.
Listen, it's like I was saying, the Democrats will come into Congress and propose a bill to burn down the House, and Republicans will say only burn down the kitchen.
I think we need
instead of arguing, how about we don't burn down the House? They say, well, we'll negotiate with you on what you're asking for.
Well, what upsets me is that how is it the responsibility of the citizen to prove these things? Is it not the responsibility of the government to prove to the people that their elections are free and fair?
We are the government.
Yes, and is it not the responsibility of the media to be a watchdog for the people and ask real questions
about the states? Yes.
And this is why I'm pretty pessimistic on where we go next. Because the media in this country they're Democrats.
That's true.
I mean, the overwhelming majority of all of these big media companies are pro-Democrat. They would not report on Hunter Biden, even though it was probably one of the biggest stories of the decade or longer. And so they're not watchdogs, they're advocates. And so you have advocates, and we are headed towards California-style one-party rule. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.